those sort of savings and some of the savings we're identifying in the councils that we now control, they actually reinforce the savings that we mentioned in the manifesto.
Well, the councils that you're talking about are actually, in many cases, suggesting they're going to increase council tax because they can't afford to make the spending commitments that they're already made.
Before we hear Tice's excuses, here's Professor Tony Travers from the School of Public Policy speaking on Times Radio in regards to the fact that in just over 5 months, Reform are having to row back their almighty pledges. Pledges where they said they'd send in DOE-style task forces who would be able to root out council waste, and so there would be no need for council tax rises. Of course, all of it bullshit.
Cuts that they have made, are they just simply not enough to keep the council running with the services and infrastructure that people are expecting?
I mean, they're nowhere near enough. These are tiny, tiny cuts. Councils have hundreds of £1 million budgets. They have enormous demands on them, rising demands for special educational needs spending, which is a separate account, but it nevertheless is part of the overall budgetary position. Rising demands for temporary accommodation if they're housing authorities. The demands are rising.
We're making hundreds of millions of savings in what I've said is the mismanagement of the local government pension schemes. There's billions of savings.
So why are those councils still increasing council tax?
Let me just finish. Because the government is putting on statutory obligations primarily through the SEND system, which is actually in the process of bankrupting many, many councils. That's why the government is going to be doing a white paper on SEND.
But these factors were already in place, Richard. And if you were serious about running councils, you would and should have been aware of that before making promises you weren't able to keep.
Because they recognise it is currently unaffordable. We are making huge savings.
Spending has been flat or less, actually, as I said earlier, lower. Most councils are spending less today than they were 15 years ago. So I think what Reform councils will have done is to take office and discover that it's much easier in opposition to offer tax cuts. And we've seen, Kemi Badenoch at the national level doing that this week. It's easier to offer tax cuts in opposition than it is in government.
And that's essentially the focus of how we will run a government when we win the next general election.
Let's hope that never, ever happens. Click here for a bunch of rotten, dumb and bigoted Reform councillors who haven't got a clue how to run a council.